Hello, guys, and welcome back to another edition of the Pure Investments Crypto Podcast. I'm your host, Kai, and I'm joined here by Smith and GR. Say hello,
Hi
guys.
guys. Hello.
So let's kind of break into it. I believe last week when we last spoke, we were up near, I want to say we were at like 8,500 or so when we last talked about the market. This week's been primarily red. Hasn't really been much in the way of green. I think there was like those 1 or 2 days. I want to say what was it, like Friday and Saturday or something like that were a little bit green. But otherwise, the last 2 days have been large red days to say the least. As you can see, if you're looking at the video version of the podcast, from what I can tell, I don't know what you guys are seeing on your charts, but as best I can tell, we're in this like triangle that kind of formed since back in January or so. This nice symmetrical triangle, and at worst I see like 7,000. And that's not just like looking at the triangle, it's also just looking at like historical RSI and stuff of that nature. We really haven't fallen below 30 basically ever on RSI outside of like, one quick flash dip type of day, and we're at 35 right now, so I can't imagine much more than around that 7K number. What are you guys seeing?
Is that for the 1 day chart?
Yeah, it's on the 1 day. I'm looking at the daily, yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I agree.
I was looking at the 4 hour chart earlier and I noticed that today is the third time in the last 2 years where the RSI has gone below 19%. And not much has actually happened today, really. I mean, we've had obviously a sell-off, there has been a decline, but the third time in 2 years, and this is all to show for it. I don't think the Bears are in control yet.
Yeah. No, probably not. I mean, it has to feel like they're going to kind of run out of steam here soon. Just again, the daily's a pretty good indication. If you look at the daily line, there's just a line here that I have drawn on 30, and you can kind of see every time we hit it, we immediately ricochet off of that. Like the last time we hit it was back on March 31st there, right before that like bull run we had, that short bull run we had where Bitcoin went from, around like 6,500 to 10K and all the alts ran up and everything. And then prior to that was that dip down to 6K before the run up to 12. And both of those were, basically V bottom reversals, you know what I mean? It kind of hit and immediately exploded upwards the next day. So I wouldn't be shocked to see basically what we're seeing right now, which is a small recovery going into the daily candle closing. Maybe let's look at the 4 hour chart here. Maybe up a little bit more. By the time most people, watch this will probably have happened. But I wouldn't be shocked to see a rebound up to around like 8,000 before tomorrow having one last huge red day and like drop down to 7K and immediately spike back up. Similar to one of those days, back around that 6K dip where we have like that huge bottom wick that kind of just comes out of nowhere and then rebounds by the end of the day.
I definitely agree.
Yeah,
right around
so
the 7,100.
yeah, but I mean every other
6,900.
signal, it won't really take much at this point for MACD to cross up actually. It's kind of, again, like Smith said, like for as strong as the bears have seemed, none of these things have been like causing the indicators to go nuts. They've honestly been kind of like going slowly down, which I'm pretty fond of. But you've got VIX triggering the buy. Again with the RSI being down at 35, I mean there's just not much more room for it to go. At worst, it would dip below 30 for a day. You know what I mean? That's basically the pattern that we've seen over the past. I mean, you go back as far as Bitfinex wants to go. You go back to 2015, and at worst, you're below it for a day. So the odds of us staying below 30 RSI for anything more than a day, maybe two, are slim to none. Which, that would line up perfectly with that dip to the bottom of the triangle around 7,000. I don't know what you guys are seeing in the alt market. It's interesting right now. I mean, it's kind of playing out the way I anticipated it playing out back when I, kind of notified in premium to start looking to, move out of some of the positions that you were in for alts. Everything's kind of just been basically what I thought would happen. You know, I figured the alts would come back down to almost the levels before the, you know, last month and a half, 2 months of bull run, which you're kind of seeing. You know, Poe before that bull run was down at around 300, and we're back at like 370, 380 right now. Sub, very similar, was down at, you know, I want to say like 4,000, and now it's down at like 5,400. Not as low, but, you know, close enough that, you know, it regained most of those losses, so to speak. C and D, very similar. It's right back down to those bottoms, a whole bunch of them. If you just kind of go through the market, we're back down at that low from back in, you know, mid to late March. So that's kind of a good sign, I would think. That should be signaling a reversal soon on those as well. So really the whole market is kind of seeming to be finding its bottom, I would say. I don't know what you guys think, though.
I'm more so just kind of going through the coins and picking the ones that I know are going to actually make a strong move because they have the stuff to back it. Kind of like 0x and Ripple. I've just been diving into those and looking at some of the fundamentals and the news surrounding them.
Yeah.
Trying to pick out the coins that are going to actually make like a big run when the market finally turns.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, though, I mean, looking across all the markets, you see all the alts RSIs at like 30 on the daily. Bitcoin RSI is like 30 on the daily. The only one that's not quite there in that regard is Ethereum. What I do find interesting about Ethereum, though, is it's had these 2 days of red that haven't been that large, but man, it has consolidated RSI to a insane level, really. Like a 10% drop on Ethereum has dropped the RSI from 72 down to 45 in the past 2 days, which is kind of interesting. Same thing, Stoke RSI is down to 0 too.
Oh yeah, no, it's bottoming out.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see how that turns. MACD did turn down on it, and squeeze momentum's basically there. It seems like today's like a decision day for whether or not it's gonna bounce and ricochet off these marks or, you know, flag down for a while. I'm not ready to get too excited with Ethereum just yet, simply because of how long we were flatlined down on Stoke back in, you know, February. I mean, we had like a whole month of 0. So I don't want to like get excited for Stoke being that low just yet, because I suppose it's possible that we see a repeat of that out of Ethereum, but I don't think so. I think in general you're seeing the majority of the market kind of all look very similar, which is near its bottom. There's a couple coins that aren't, like TRX. TRX for some reason has been immune to
TRX is just strange though.
Yeah,
I mean, it kind of does what it wants to do.
It really does. It's actually looking at it, it's in an interesting, like almost a cup and handle pattern right now. I'm curious to see how that plays out. I don't know that I'd be jumping on it per se, but over 1,100 could be interesting. Yeah, I would definitely wait for Bitcoin as well. But I mean, we're getting to the point where I'm starting to look for entries on things. You know,
Ethereum.
Yeah, like I sold out a lot near the top. You know, mentioned it before, but you know, we basically called that top perfect. So now it's just a matter of calling that bottom. You know what I mean? And riding that wave back up here. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Has there been? I haven't been following much. Has there been a lot in the way of news or FUD or anything like that?
So Coinbase just came out with Coinbase Pro, if you've heard about that, which is their ERC20, or they acquired Paradex, I think. So ERC20, decentralized exchange, and they made Coinbase Pro. So they don't actually have any like ERC20 tokens. It's just the stuff that they have on Coinbase. But clearly they're gearing up for adding the ERC20 anytime soon.
That'll be interesting. I wonder though how they're going to go about that. Like, are they going to add, I guess, a few select tokens? I would assume it's not just going to be like they're just going to take over like IDEX and add everything. You know, it's going to have to be. I assume. Yeah, they're gonna have to probably vet them and add certain specific ones. But that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because that could definitely cause quite a few of these ERC tokens to skyrocket. Because there's a lot of them out there. You know,
They'll be pretty selective, I bet, in their whole process because I mean they've kind of built a reputation of only picking like the big coins, Bitcoin
yeah,
Cash,
I'm
Bitcoin Litecoin.
curious though to see how that plays out because you know the big ones as far as market cap goes aren't really the most reputable per se. You know, a lot of the big market cap ones like EOS and TRX. I think TRX is still an ERC20 token. I know EOS hasn't launched its mainnet yet, so it's still
It's
technically,
soon,
but
within a week or two, couple weeks.
what EOS is?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah. I feel like TRX just launched their mainnet a couple weeks ago, I want to say. But I don't know if that was testnet. I don't honestly remember. But
That was testnet, I'm pretty sure.
Was it testnet? Okay. So I'm not sure if they'd be looking to go with tokens like that, which are not going to be ERC20 tokens in a couple weeks, months. You know what I mean? Are they looking for ones that aren't trying to launch a mainnet and are planning on staying on that platform more so? Something like Poe, for example, is not going to have a mainnet. You know what I mean? They don't need it. The token is there for their marketplace, and they run off of the Bitcoin network for all their actual stuff that they do in the background. So I'm curious to see how they plan that out because there's a few coins like that really don't have quote unquote like mainnet launches where they're going to be getting off of Ethereum anywhere in the future.
Yeah. Well, I'd assume they'd stick with the ones that are going to stay with ERC20 since it was an ERC20 exchange.
Yeah, but I'm curious though because there's definitely ones like EOS and TRX and stuff that were kind of there's some little shady things going on, not too bad, but definitely like things to question. So I'm curious how they vet those because to date, I mean, outside of Bitcoin Cash at least, they've been very strict with what they add and making sure everything's on the up and up. I think Bitcoin Cash was their first slip up, which is also why you saw them be very adamant about not adding other coins for the time being, because I think they realized that they, kind of jumped the gun on that one a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So to speak. So I'll be interested to see how they handle that. Anything else? Because that's not really FUD. That's actually good news.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I assume they'll probably release it near Bitcoin's bottom. That would make sense because you wouldn't want to release a big feature like that when the market's going down.
Oh, no. I mean, now would be around the time to do it, right?
Yeah.
You'd basically be, I mean, it'd be like a bailout for the market in a sense. You know what I mean? You'd get a lot more investment money and everything flowing into those alts. So it would spark something. I'll be interested to see how that pans out, though. That's definitely a big move for them because ERC20 tokens are not always considered the strongest coins as far as like history. Most of them are a year old. Almost all of them are, honestly.
It's kind of the former platform now. There's a lot of new, faster things you can build tokens off of.
Yeah, but that said, at the same time, things like Neo and Cardano, they've really failed in any launches they've tried. Neo's network has basically crashed almost every time they've tried to have an ICO on the network. So they've had a lot of issues with that. So while there are better and faster ones in theory, they have yet to prove that they can handle the load like Ethereum. You can launch an ERC20 token in minutes and it handles it fine just on there's no glitching, there's no network outages, there's really no issues with it, and those are issues that all these competitors of Ethereum quote unquote have shown they're not up to dealing with just yet. So I think Ethereum as far as that regard is here to stay for at least a few more years until one of these guys actually is able to catch up and start seeing mass launches of new cryptos. Because right now, at the end of the day, if you're launching a new crypto, you're still going with Ethereum usually.
You want to go with the safe one, of course.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be dealing with some of the stuff. What was it? ONT, I believe, is on Neo, right? Who dealt with like that really weird launch when they first opened and like the whole Neo network crashed and all that other stuff.
I just wanted to. Sorry to interrupt you, Kai. I just wanted to go back and talk about the Bitcoin sentiment at the moment. I saw a couple people earlier, they were kind of panicking, what Twitter is looking like at the moment is pretty diabolical. You've got people just saying they're going to exit the market and rip crypto, but honestly, there's nothing to worry about right now. We still have two strong supports
Hmm.
We have multiple strong fib supports. No real support or resistance has been broken right now, so there's no reason to worry about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Alts have obviously taken a dip, but they had quite a good run up at the start of May, end of April. So I think the dip across the board on alts was necessary. We just need some more time to consolidate within this triangle on Bitcoin.
Yep.
I think honestly, June, July, we're still on track to sort of transition into that alt season that everyone's been expecting. I still think summer, there is a strong chance that we will
Absolutely.
get what we're looking for.
Just throwing it out there, it also fits into my August theory if you want to look at it. It's been about 3 weeks since the top of this last little altcoin run, and the August theory that I covered with Verge a few weeks ago. If we go back to that little chart, if I can find it, it was a very similar setup still, where we had that little run up and then this dip down. And I
Yeah.
believe that dip down, let's see how many days it was last time. It was about 32, 33 days. So right around another week or two, which would fall right in line with what you were just saying, and then the huge alt season run. So, not guaranteeing that in 2 weeks there's going to be a mass alt season run or anything, but simply put, it follows that trend that I was trying to explain in the past, where it kind of felt like this mini run to just kind of recoup gains more so than anything. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I do think we could maybe see one more mini run and then like another couple weeks of drop down. But like I was saying earlier, we're kind of back at almost at the levels before the last mini alt run that we had last like month or two. Just looking around the market, like I said before, like Poe I think got to a low of like 300 and it's at like 380 right now. TRX is really the only one that doesn't seem to be affected. TRX and ONT. But same thing, Sub was down at like 4,000. It's at like 5,400 now. C and D.
I
was
think
at
the
800.
fundamental news has been propping TRX up and Ontology.
Probably,
mostly.
yeah. They were also two of the bigger runners of that altcoin run, so it stands to reason that more people are going to be less willing to sell them. That's just, typically those types of coins will flag a little bit longer through the market when they had a big run up because people are less willing to get out. ONT actually looks great right now. Speaking of ONT, not investment advice or anything, but it's actually in a really nice daily flag if you look at it. But yeah, so I think all in all, though, you look across the market and the majority of altcoins are in that same position that Bitcoin is, where for the past 2 or 3 weeks, they've kind of just been flagging down, and now they're all sitting around that 30 RSI mark. And I think that's something kind of important to look at. It's just something to keep an eye on. Similarly, though, with Bitcoin, if I can get my Polynex chart up here for historical purposes, there she is. We had a period like this kind of back in 2016 in a way, where we kind of just flagged through this little triangle for, almost almost like 6-7 months. And I feel like we're just kind of in that same little pattern here. We might be in this for a little bit longer. But all in all, we had a very similar, not a completely the same setup, but it ended up being like 200 days of mostly up and down sideways movement without making any kind of new attempts at highs. And we're kind of in that same boat here. I think we're at like 160 days, which would pan out actually really well for the way this triangle is, because the end of this triangle we're in is about 230 days or so total. So you're talking like, July, August would be the breakout for that. Which would stand to reason. Alts could have their run before Bitcoin goes off. That's basically what happened last year. Not around this time. I think it was like more like March that alts went off. But the timing of the year isn't as important so much as it is just the general flow of the market. Bitcoin kind of was going sideways, and then alts had a big run. Bitcoin continued going in its little flag, and then everything took off after the fact. So I think that that's definitely a plausible scenario here, where we see an altcoin run around that June late June, July area, and then Bitcoin takes off afterwards.
I think we'll probably see like Ripple, Verge, and Tron be the leading coins that go and make a big run because people tend to.
It's plausible.
At least
you
historically.
look at some of the big runners from the altcoin run back in 2017, like that March run, and
Yeah.
some of them exploded and some of them didn't. Digibyte is one that really didn't have anywhere near the gains it had the first time around. If you look back at the original Digibyte run, it basically had like a TRX type of run, even bigger, honestly. Digibyte in March of 2017 was about 33 sats, and it got all the way up to 2,700. Even TRX was only, I think, up to like 2,000, right? So,
Yeah.
it had an even bigger run. But this last big alt season, Digibyte only went from around 86 up to about 900. So it wasn't even, it was still a great, amazing run, but it wasn't even remotely close to the run it had the first time around.
Yeah, Bitcoin and the overall market sentiment essentially works like a spring. I'll try and explain that as best I can. Before a big move can happen, obviously price action across the board on Bitcoin and other altcoins has to suppress. So it's like a coil, you have to suppress it before the run. And one thing that shows me that Bitcoin is currently consolidating hard and it is suppressing is the fact that the TK has crossed 2 times in the last month and price action has actually got less volatile. And also on the 1-day chart as well, this is for the 1-day chart, the MACD has crossed, I believe, multiple times in the last few months, but price action has again got thinner, and like I said, it's suppressing like a coil. So if my theory is right, we are coming to the end of that phase. Bitcoin does suppress from its big run that it had up to 20k, and then we do transition into that alt season in the next few months, like Kai said.
Yeah, but all in all, I mean, all this Twitter panic and stuff, I think people do have to realize that we had an entire year basically in 2017, more or less from March till almost January of this year, so almost an entire year, actually February of this year. So about 11 months of just nonstop bull running of either Bitcoin, altcoins, or both. And this is the first real consolidation market that crypto's been in in that time. Outside of that, we only really ever had these like 15 to 20 day consolidation periods before some huge explosion upward again. And I think it's important to realize that, you go back a couple years ago and they were more spread out, these moves. There was a lot more sideways movement, and it's not necessarily bad to have that sideways movement. I would not expect it to last, a year and a half like it did in the past, simply because back then you had, a couple $1 million trading Bitcoin. It wasn't all that much, you know what I mean? Even at the start of 2017, I think the entire market cap was something like $10 million, So you basically just had a bunch of kids who were mining and trading it, and it wasn't really, investors per se that were riding the price action. So I wouldn't expect that kind of sideways movement. That kind of sideways movement back then was more related to things like the Mt. Gox crash, which was still to this day, I mean, that one event is bigger FUD than we've had combined throughout this entire market cycle we've been in. You had 90% of the trading volume in the entire world for Bitcoin that just evaporated overnight. That's a lot different than the little things we've been dealing with here,
China's nothing compared to it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, imagine it's kind of like the equivalent as if the stock market just evaporated overnight and nobody could trade all of a sudden for like 6 months. And all that happened was prices went down. That's not what's happening here, but that's what happened back during Mt. Gox. And it didn't die then. It's not dying now. All these ideas of crypto's over, the bubbles popped. It's kind of ridiculous. When you think about it, we are still leaps and bounds over the start of last year. It's not even particularly close. We're still, I think probably thousands of % higher than last year at this point even. So I think people need to take a breath and realize that the market needed this type of long correction. It was kind of necessary to continue long-term growth, just to continue on that volatile move nonstop for 2 or 3 years would have made the eventual crash much worse than
like I said, the spring needs to reset. There needs to be steam.
Exactly.
And Bitcoin looks to be building up steam right now. I mean, it's in the triangle that everyone can see that it's consolidating, it's moving sideways, it's gradually getting less and less volatile, and it just works like a Bollinger Band does. It suppresses and then explodes, and you just need more time to build up that steam. So
yeah, exactly, and it's fine. You know, people, I think that's what I was just trying to get across, is that in general, I think people are so used to only having to wait a couple weeks for Bitcoin to explode again that the general sentiment among the masses is a little bit lower now than it probably should be. But I think in terms of the general sentiment among the people that matter, the people that control the market, Bitcoin's in a perfectly fine spot.
Sure, it's more the people who've actually been in the market. They understand what's going on since they've been there since like 2015. But majority of the market now is so young, they just don't understand. They know nothing else.
You figure probably 80% of the people that are involved in this market right now weren't involved in it in April of last year. You know, the amount of new traders that started to pump money into crypto during that last bull run, and it got exponentially more and more and more as we made that run from, 2K to 20K. It's insane. And the alt run again didn't help because people see, 20,000% gains on something like TRX and want a piece of it. So more and more and more people got in, and now you have more and more people to also complain. So that is part of, I think, a large part of the reason why the general sentiment seems bad. But all in all, if this were a regular stock market, nobody would really be panicking. This is a pretty normal move, It's a pretty standard type of thing to have a 6-month consolidation period after a year of thousands of percents of gain. But I mean, that's about it, I think. I don't know if I have anything else. Do you guys have anything else to discuss for this week? I don't think there's a lot that really happened outside of this little bleeding. I think this was more of a morale podcast for those people that we're talking about.
I have to agree.
Who really weren't involved. Don't freak out. Everything at this moment, at least, is fine. I see no reason to be panicking. And I don't want that to sound like we're just like, bullish. But in general, there's really, from a TA perspective and from a, fundamental perspective as well, there's really no reason to panic right now. We're in that channel that we keep talking about. Everything is to the point where it should be bouncing any day now. I see no reason to panic. I would have a feeling by the time we record this next podcast for next week, we're probably near the top of this triangle, up near like 9K or so again. That would be my gut feeling.
I'd agree.
And then the following week we might be back down at 7,600 or something again at the bottom, but that's going to be the ebb and flow of everything, So that's basically it. I think we're going to close this one up. It's going to be a little bit shorter this week. There's just not a lot to go over as far as, news in the market. Everything's kind of just going sideways, consolidating, and, we'll keep evaluating week by week. So that's it for this week's podcast, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week. Bye.